just want to welcome everyone in the house this evening. Welcome to those following on the internet. And this evening we're going to be looking at the life of Joseph. We can open our Bibles in Genesis chapter 49, verse 24. And Joseph's name actually means that the one that you add on. So his mom, when he was born, his mother was Rachel, and Rachel wanted to have more. So, she was saying that he can be fruitful, that there would be more fruit that comes from him, that there would be an abundance of fruit. And so this is what the name Joseph means. And we know Joseph went through rough times, right, with his family. And when we look at Joseph, we want to also see that Joseph is a type of Christ. He's a type of Christ because just like Jesus, he was rejected. He was rejected by his own brethren. So just like Jesus was rejected by the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the religious people of the time when he came, Joseph was rejected just the same. They wanted to kill him. At the end, they sold him for 20 pieces of silver. Jesus was sold for 30 pieces of silver. Through this whole thing, he then brings, Joseph brought redemption to his brethren, to his family. Because the fact of going to Egypt, then, he went through Potiphar's house, then he went through a time in jail. So we would esteem that to be about maybe 15 years, because he was sold as a young boy, teenager, probably young man. And then time he came out and revealed the dreams to Pharaoh, he would have been about 30 years old. So you imagine all that time, right? He could have really become bitter and angry against God. But he stayed faithful. And he saw that God was guiding him. God was the one that was directing his path. And when he came out at the end, he saw that God had done all this to save his family because of the drought that was then brought on Canaan and on the land of Egypt. So he saw it as a good thing because God sent him there so that the whole family would be saved actually and would have provision for their latter days. So let's just read. This is the part where Israel, so Jacob, is blessing the children. And this was the custom that, when the father was going to pass away, he would call his children and he would bless them. In fact, Sister Paula read on Sunday, we read about Manasseh and Ephraim, how Jacob, although he was blind, but he had one on one side, one on the other, and then he crossed his arms, right? Joseph knew about this, so that's why Joseph put the one on the right hand, the eldest one, the younger one on the left hand. But Jacob crossed the hands because there was a prophetic ministry that was going on there. And when you see Abraham, even when Abraham blessed Israel and Esau, there was even though Jacob was trying to do this by being malicious, deceiving, but yet God knows everything. And the blessing that he got would have been the blessing that he would have gotten anyways. But is that he was trying to work it through his own strength, and he had many years to learn how to deal with that and how to sort that out. So we see it with Isaac, we see it with Abraham, and so we see it throughout the generation where the father blesses the children. And in the Hebrew culture, the blessing to the eldest was always a double portion. And this is why, in fact, Joseph at this time becomes kind of the oldest brother, right? Because he gets double blessing. And this is why Jacob will tell him, Ephraim and Manasseh will be mine. They will be like my sons. Because Joseph here receives like double portion from all the other brothers in terms of that blessing. And this is why, talking about receiving double portion, when Elisha asks Elijah, Elijah tells him, ask whatever you would want. And he says, I want double portion. He wasn't being greedy. Often people might think that he was being greedy by asking, oh, I want twice more than you. Actually, he was asking that he wanted to be like his eldest son. He wanted to receive the portion of the eldest son. So that's actually what he was asking. So all this coming back now to our verse. And so I've not read the part of Reuben and of Simeon and of Levite and of Judah. We'll just go on with Joseph, since he's the one that we want to look at this evening. And Joseph is a fruitful bow, even a fruitful bow by a well, whose branches run over the wall. The archers have sorely grieved him, and shot at him, and hated him. But his bow abode in strength, and the arms of his hands were made strong by the hands of the mighty God of Jacob. From hence is the shepherd, the stone of Israel, even by the God of thy father, who shall help thee, and by the Almighty, who shall bless thee with blessings of heaven above, blessings of the deep that lieth under, blessings of the breast and of the womb. And so he receives here this blessing, but there's this thing that his father saw, right, in Joseph. And these words that come is that his arm and his hand were made strong, right? But his bow is in strength. I think another version said that his bow stayed steady. If you look like at the NIV version, it talks about his bow that stayed steady. So although he was under fire by other archers, people were shooting at him. And obviously when it's talking about this, it's referring to his brethren that betrayed him, that attacked him, that hated him, that tried to kill him because of their jealousy that they had against him. Just like the people, the religious people were jealous of Jesus, and they wanted to get rid of him. Well, just in that same way, they were jealous of Joseph. But it says that his bow stayed steady. And when you're shooting, in fact, if you're shooting with a bow or with a gun, it's kind of the same thing. You want to be steady, if you want to be precise. As soon as you start moving about, it might go everywhere, and you don't really have precision on your side any longer. And it's quite hard to stay precise and focused when there are things that are thrown at you left and right. And remember, even the verse that we read tonight, talking about, the wise man that digs deep, right, to lay the foundation. This is what the wise man does. He digs deep, because the deeper he digs and the stronger the foundation is, the less possibility there is of the house to be moved, right? That's why you dig deep. There are some houses that were just, even today actually, some houses they're just on the dirt. So they were just put on the dirt. And so they have problems now, because when the dirt is sinking or if it's moving, then the house is just going to collapse just as well. When I saw like the foundation, there's a place near here that's called Pine Lake, and the foundations that they had like 2 meters of foundation already that they had put in, and then they had made a cave, and then on top of that, now you would get to the level ground and to the part of the house. And so that was a foundation that was dug deep so that it wouldn't be moved easily. And so the fact here, it shows the character of Joseph. He was able, that even through these difficult times that he continued to stay focused on God. He didn't lose his focus. And because he kept his eyes on God, it allowed him to go through each of those situations and to come out of them. Now, when you enter situations that are difficult, you don't know how long they're going to be. You don't know if it's going to be 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, 10 years. But Joseph stayed focused on God. And this shows us that he was aiming, the point, the goal, the target that he had. He didn't lose focus through everything that went out through his life. When he was accused by the wife of Potiphar that he was trying to assault her, he didn't lose focus. He was thrown into prison, but he didn't lose focus. He was there, and the day when there was the one that was serving the wine, and the baker that were there, the butler, I think, and the baker, came and had a dream. He was able to give them that dream, the revelation that God had given him, because he stayed focused on what God had done through his life. He didn't become bitter. He didn't reject God, and he didn't miss the calling that God had placed on him. He stayed focused, and this is why Jacob is able to say, when he's actually praying and blessing his son, he's actually able to say, although he had his bow, but he stayed steady, right? And the arms of his hands, they were made strong by the hands of the mighty God of Jacob. So because of that relationship, right, when we look at God, we allow our aim to be strong. God helps us in this. And the stone, it says the stone of Israel, other version says the rock of Israel, right? It was a rock. He is solid. He was on solid ground. And so we see that Joseph in all of this just stayed faithful to God, to allow him that at the point where he needed to go before Pharaoh, he was able to go there. He didn't have any fear, but he was prepared. Just like he had done a couple of years before, telling the dreams to to the butler and to the baker, he was then able to go before Pharaoh and to give him his dream. And then that brought him to the place where he was able then to bring all of his family back into Egypt. And so I just thought we would look at this as Joseph, because this is a wonderful character to see that he stayed focused on the goal. And Jesus is really the same. When we look at his life, we see that Jesus came and just looked at fulfilling the will of his Father on earth. And yes?
Yeah, and with Pharaoh, what I like about him, his brethren, he could be awkward to them. He could be spiteful, but he didn't. He still treat them okay.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Yeah, he treat them fine. He could be really, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. He could have destroyed them.
Yes.
He could have killed them.
Yeah.
Because the kind of power that he had,
Yeah.
he could have ordained that they would be hanged,
Yeah.
or whatever he wanted,
Yeah.
thrown to the crocodiles or alligators, and he would have had no problem, and nobody would have asked any question about it,
Yeah.
because he was in that power, in that position, that he could have done that as soon as he saw his brethren, right? And he could have been angry against them. Now, also, when I was looking at this text, I was thinking, when you look at the life of Jacob, you see that at one time God is going to reveal to him, these things when he's going to learn about Joseph, that Joseph is still alive. And he's going to say, God is going to then reveal to him in a dream there in chapter 46. Verse 3, and he said, I am God, the God of thy father. Fear not to go down into Egypt, for I will there make of thee a great nation, and I will go down with thee into Egypt. And I will also surely bring thee up again, and Joseph shall put his hand upon thine eyes. So there, God tells him, so he hasn't seen Joseph yet, but God tells him, Joseph is alive. Joseph is going to close your eyes. In other words, Joseph will be there till the day you die. Now, if you read the precedent chapters, you will see how often Jacob said, in fact, when he learned that Joseph had died and been killed, nobody could is it counsel him or
Comfort.
comfort him? Nobody could comfort him. They tried to comfort him. His sons tried. You know, everybody was trying to comfort him, but nobody could comfort him. And he even after he kept it, since he wanted to keep Benjamin so close to him. But when I saw this, I thought, but why didn't God then just tell him, or why didn't he even seek God to know, where is my son? What has happened to him? And I thought, God told him at the right time. And God tells us things at the right time for us to act upon it. If he had told him at the beginning, right, Jacob would have surely sent people in Egypt to find Joseph and to bring him back to him. But God knew that he was sending there Joseph for a purpose, for a mission, and he couldn't be touched. And you know, sometimes there's people that we would think they love us very much, and they do love us very much. But God keeps them out of our situation because he has to deal with us. And the way God deals with us is because he has a purpose for us, right? Not only for us, but also for others that we might not know about, or for those that we might love. He has a purpose for them as well. And so we go in this kind of chamber where we're like in darkness and we don't know what's happening, but there we're being molded, there we're being fashioned, there we're being transformed to face the situation that is going to be put ahead of us. And the family can't take part in it. The friends can't take part in it. And people can't be aware of it. It has to just to be us with God, so that we can come out of this situation and be the tool that God wants us to be. And so Jacob, you know, when I saw this, I thought, but God is speaking here to Jacob. Why didn't God tell him? Because God had a purpose for Joseph, that he needed to leave Joseph alone, and Jacob surely would not have done that. He needed that Joseph would be alone through that time until he came out to be second into Egypt, second in authority, just under Pharaoh, leading all the resources so that his family would be able to have all kind of resources. Remember, the God that we serve is God the provider. Now, Sister Madge, I thought, made a very good point, talking about Joseph and saying what he could have done. We see that Joseph, when he's going to see his brethren, he's going to recognize them. They're not going to recognize him. So that could be because he was a young age. And you know, when we're younger, we can change a lot. When we're older, we kind of keep the same face for years, right? If you I don't know if you have passport photos, but if you look at your passport photos when you were a child, or pictures, school pictures, like when you're a kid, you might be changing like every year, or if you look at one 5 years apart, you look like a completely different person. But when you come to your 20s, 25, then you go to 35, you don't change too much. And then 45, might have gray hair and some wrinkles, but that's all that changes. You kind of stay the same. And as kids, you always remember people, and people might not remember you because you've changed, but you remember their faces because obviously they haven't changed that much. So probably they wouldn't have expected to see Joseph there, and to see Joseph in authority. They probably wouldn't have expected that as well. Just let me read. I just need to find this verse. This is when they moved to Egypt. The first time when they're going to come to him, which is in chapter 42, I think. It's going to be in 42. Let's read from verse 6. And Joseph was the governor over the land, and he it was that sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brethren came and bowed down themselves before him with their faces to the earth. Now Joseph had dreamed this when he was younger, and his brethren mocked him because of it. But when God gives us revelation, people can mock us, but it's going to come to pass. And Joseph saw his brethren, and he knew them, but made himself strange to them. And he spake roughly unto them. And he said unto them, Whence come he? And they said, From the land of Canaan, to buy food. And Joseph knew his brethren, but they knew not him. And Joseph remembered the dream which he dreamed of them, and said unto them, Ye are spies, to see the nakedness of the land, ye are come. And they said unto him, Nay, my lord, but to buy food are thy servants come. We are all one man's son. We are true men. Thy servants are no spies. And he said unto them, Nay, but to see the nakedness of the land, ye are come. In other words, to see the weakness in the land. And they said, Thy servants are 12 brethren, the son of one man in the land of Canaan. And behold, the youngest is in this day with our father, and one is not. And Joseph said unto them, That is it, that I spake unto you, saying, Ye are spies. Hereby ye shall prove by the life of Pharaoh, he shall not go forth hence, except your youngest brother come hither. And if we go just a little bit further, verse 21, and they said one to another, so this is the brethren now speaking, We are verily guilty concerning our brother, in that we saw the anguish of his soul. So Joseph, when he was sold, when he was thrown into the pit, it's not like he was, I don't care, I trust in God, I believe in God, right? They're saying here, he was scared in that time. He was worried, right? But all of that didn't make him deviate in the goal that he had. So it says, Then we saw the anguish of his soul when he besought us, and we would not hear. Therefore is this distress come upon us. And so the question I want to ask us tonight is why didn't Joseph just say, You're my brothers, and hug them and kiss them? Why? Why did he, if you read the story, they're gonna come and pay for the food, because obviously they were in a time of drought, so there wasn't no food, so that's why they went to Egypt. They bought the food, then each one of them, when they're gonna go back to Canaan, they're gonna find that actually the money that they had bought the food was in their sacks with the food. So they're going to be very worried at that time, because they're going to say, well, surely we paid for this. Now we get the money back, and he was really rough with us. Why was Joseph like that with them? Why didn't he just say, You're my brothers, I welcome you, because we see that the end result is that he loves them.
Well, he had to, his dream had to be fulfilled, where we dreamt that the 11th star bowed down to him, the moon and the sun and the 11th star.
Yes. So at that time, the brothers have already bowed down to him.
They hadn't bowed yet, but they would have to.
Yeah, that's right. Well, Jacob hadn't. The mother probably not. Maybe Benjamin wasn't there, so he wouldn't. But I'm sure they bowed down at one point. But just before they saw him, as soon as they saw him. Because he was the governor, so that was showing a form of respect. Won't find it right here. But that could be that, there wasn't Jacob, there wasn't the mother, because he had the dream of the sun and the moon, and then there was the 11, and Benjamin wasn't there. So, okay. But he's going to be revealed to his father before that. So when his father is going to come, he's going to bow down, but he'll know already that this is Joseph, this is my son. But he'll bow down also because he's the governor. So even if there he had said, I am I'm Joseph, his father would have come and probably bowed down just the same, since he's going to do it afterwards. So why would it be that Joseph is going to go through all this situation? Go ahead, Sister Match. Don't be scared to speak.
No,
Sister Paul, I can speak after you. That's okay.
No, well, maybe it's just a maybe. Maybe he didn't want to hug them at first, because if he does that, they might not want to keep coming back, and he wanted them to. Well, that's what I think, to keep, going back to there.
Okay. So
Yes.
maybe if so. Okay. So we can take that point on. Now remember that after he told them, they did come back, because if he had told them maybe earlier, I think he would have done just the same. He would have given them all that, the money,
Yeah.
the grains, and remember when they left, he gave them all of the like each of them had a new clothing, and he sent spices to his father with donkeys and loads of that, which actually made that his father realize, this surely my son must still be alive, right? Because he saw all of that. So what were you going to say, Sister Paula?
Along the same line, I saw it twofold. Firstly, he probably wasn't, as much as he recognised, maybe he wasn't quite ready to embrace him or reveal himself, because there's a portion where he breaks down and then everybody realises, and maybe he was holding it together. Maybe as much as he was a prophet himself, he understood the dream. You know that even though he was going through the difficulty, I believe that dream kept him alive and say, yes, I understand the dream, God. This is what's going to happen. I'm going to wait for it. But when it comes now to the fulfilling of, he's seeing that, yes, I am in authority, I am in position, and I'm going to not lord it over you, but say, this is who I am. And also I'm not ready quite to reveal who I am, because God is behind everything. I think with Joseph and his character, what I've learned is that there was just something, so it has so much wisdom about him and what he had learned through that process, because like what Sister Madge was saying, he could have told everybody in Egypt what's happened to him. He could have vented as he saw the brothers, look who I am, and boasted over that I'm over you, and why did you do this? But he didn't, he held all that back. And what wisdom to do that. How many of us would say, we'll hold back, you did this, and why did you do that? I probably wouldn't have held, I probably would have known my character as well. I was right, you was wrong, but he didn't. And I think it shows the strength of his personality, his character, and to see that, yes, God is fulfilling all things. But I think maybe deep down he wasn't quite ready to expose some things, and there were some lessons that they had to learn as well. So, I don't know.
Yeah, okay. It's some good points, and I was thinking about it as well, because this has to have a reason. There has to be a purpose.
Yeah.
And so I'll suggest this point of what I think might be the reason for it is that, remember, we talked also about Joseph being a type of Christ. And so his brothers, actually, we would be like Jesus' brothers, because we rejected him. We are all sinners and fallen short of the glory of God. And at one point, Jesus might reveal himself in our lives, and we might not even know who he is, right? And things might happen in our lives, and we might not realize that actually, this is Jesus that we're talking about. Kind of like the blind men, right? When the blind men at Silo, Jesus healed him, and then everybody wanted to know, who done this to you? And he couldn't say who it was, because he didn't know. He said, it's this guy, I think it's called Jesus.
He said a man called Jesus.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, but then he hadn't seen him, he hadn't known him, he didn't know what he looked like, right? So then he had to go and look for him. And here we see, like, they're coming to Joseph. they don't realize that he's actually the one that they've thrown out, that they didn't want. And
But remember,
and when we see the first thing that happens when they're going through this process here is that they start saying to one another in verse 21, "We are verily guilty concerning our brother, in that we saw the anguish in his soul." So this is the first thing that happens as they come into confrontation, into a difficult path. The first thing that comes up, it is because of what we have done.
yeah,
All of their life, it must have been going on and on and on, right? This was a secret that only them knew about. They probably didn't talk about it to nobody else, certainly not to their children or to others. You know, it's not something that they were going to boast about.
because what he did, he kept, was it Judah? He kept back and sent the rest of them, told them to bring Benjamin.
No, yeah, we're going to come to that bit. That's not yet. But here we're just at the first time that they met Joseph, and they come to thinking of, but this is because of what we've done to our brother Joseph, not knowing that he's actually in front of them. So this whole situation is actually bringing up something that they had buried. And I think that Jesus can do that in our lives as well. Sometimes we try to bury sins, or we try to bury a character, or we try to bury something, and God will put some situations so that we allow that character to come out, so that we deal with it, and so that He can deal with it, so that we can surrender it to Him. Because when it's buried, like a wound, an infected wound that is buried, right, it's going to become infectious, and it's going to spread, it's going to destroy us. And because Jesus loves us, He allows that situations will come out to make that this infection will come out. Kind of like when you have like a spot, and you put two thumbs together. It's quite awful when you think about it. I see some grim faces. But you put two fingers together to put pressure on that spot, so that the infection would go out, right? And when you see this, you see that there is this kind of like a tight rope that is set now on them, and there is this process where the rope is just going to come tighter and tighter for them to just for all this bad thing that they had kept for so many years to come out, and so that, in other words, they could be freed from it. They could be free from it. And so that's kind of what I understood, why Joseph done all of this, so that they would be freed from all of this terrible thing that they had done, right? Killing their brother, being jealous, and envying, and so forth. And when we see the process where he gets them, and they come back and so forth, they just come more and more to that sense. And when we actually look at it, if we read Genesis 37, verse 26, this is the time when they were in Dothan, I think, and they saw Joseph coming, and they talked about what they wanted to do to him, right? Verse 26. And Judah said unto his brethren, What profit is it if we slay our brother and conceal his blood? Come and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hands be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh. And his brethren were content. So Judah here comes with the idea that I'm going to sell my brother. I'm going to sell him to a stranger. And those strangers could have just as well killed Joseph. Once he's sold, once he was their slave, they could do whatever they wanted to him, there was no guarantee for his life. He was bought, and therefore the price that they had paid, that's the money that they had, that's the life that they had. If they wanted to kill Joseph, they could have done it. So Judah's giving it to another to deal with it, but he doesn't know what his future is going to be. Now, when we see that throughout this process, right, they have that discussion, they start talking. This is because of what we done to our brother. And when we go into chapter 4, which one is it now? 44, chapter 44, right? We see now that this can't stay a secret any longer, right? It comes out. Chapter 44, you know, and verse 18. So Judah is learning that Benjamin now is going to be kept by Joseph. Benjamin is the youngest brother that in the first time they traveled, so the first time they went to Egypt, they didn't take Benjamin with them because his father said, I don't want nothing wrong to happen to him. Right? Benjamin and Joseph and Benjamin were born from Rachel. And so he says, I don't want nothing to happen to him, right? My son Joseph is already dead. I'm keeping this one. I want to make sure that nothing bad happens to him. So Judah tells his father, listen, the governor has told us that if we go back and that we haven't brought our brother, there's no reason for us to do that. So against his will, the father accepts, and Judah says, listen, I will pay for my brother. So I will make sure with my life that everything goes right with him. Now when they find this cup that Joseph had hidden into Benjamin's sack, and then Joseph says, well, I'm going to put Benjamin now in prison. Judah steps up and comes. Now Judah, remember, he's the one that made this guilty plea against Joseph, right? Saying, let's sell him to the Ishmaelite. But look at him now. Now he's interceding for his brother. Now he's taking a position for his brother. He's saying, oh my Lord, let thy servant, I pray thee, speak a word in my Lord's ear. And let not thine anger burn against thy servant, for thou art even Pharaoh. My Lord asked his servant, saying, have ye a father or a brother? And we said unto my Lord, we have a father, an older man, and a child of his old age, a little one, and his brother is dead. And he alone is left of his mother, and his father loveth him. And thou saidst unto thy servant, bring him down unto me, that I may set mine eyes upon him. And we said unto my Lord, the lad cannot leave his father, for if he should leave his father would die. And thou saidst unto my servant, except your youngest brother come down with you, he shall see my face no more. And it came to pass, when we came up unto thy servant my father, we told him the words of my Lord. And our father said, go again and buy us a little food. And we said, we cannot go down if our youngest brother be with us. Then will we go down, for we may not see the face, except our youngest brother be with us. And thy servants, my father said unto us, he know that my wife bare me 2 sons. So he's talking about Rachel, right? Mm-hmm. And this is Joseph and Benjamin. And the one went out from me, Joseph, and I said, surely he is torn in pieces. So he's thinking about Joseph. And I saw him not since. And if he take this also from me, so Benjamin, and mischief befall him, he shall bring down my gray hair with sorrow to the grave. Now therefore, when I come to thy servant my father, and the lad be not with us, seeing that his life is bound up in the lad's life. So he's saying my life is bound to his life. For thy servant becomes surety for the lad unto my father, saying, if I bring him not unto thee, then I shall bear the blame to my father forever. Now therefore I pray thee, let thy servant abide instead of the lad a bondman to my Lord, and let the lad go with his brethren. For how shall I go to my father and the lad be not with me, lest peradventure I see the evil that shall come on my father. And now, Joseph, if we read the rest, we see that Joseph will not be able to restrain himself any longer. And this is when Judah, who was the one that had this situation, we see that there is a change now where he's making himself responsible for his brother. And he wants to make sure that there is no mischief that happens onto him. And so when I see this, I looked at it and I thought, well, it must have been done for a reason, so that at the end, this thing could come out and that it could be eradicated. And I think that Jesus can do that in our lives as well, when there is fears or anxiety, or when there's things that we want to hide, right? And we're not looking straight. Well, he allows that things will happen so that we can so it can come out of it, so it can simmer out. Kind of like when gold is heated up, right? And it's purified. And gold, it's going to be at a great temperature that it's going to be heated up. And when it's heated up, all the impurities come out on top. And they come out on top so that they can be wiped out. So they are then wiped out so that the gold can be pure. And the gold can be pure. And so that's what God does with us. And he allows us to go through a process so that this gold can be pure. Just like the people of Israel went around, right, so that they would be purified in the wilderness. And they went in the wilderness for 40 years so that they would be purified. And they were to be purified of one generation that actually rejected the promise that God had given them by not having faith to go into the promised land. So God purified the people of Israel for 40 years, and then they were ready to go into the promised land. And so we see that this whole process is allowing God to work on us. And sometimes we can find ourselves in midst of that process, and we can wonder what is happening. It seems that I don't have any more control. I am not in control any longer, right? This person is really rough with me. This person must not love me. And actually, Joseph loved them. He loved them. He loved them all. He didn't have any bitter feelings against them. And we're going to see this just after. And he loved them from the start. And yet they were thinking, this person is rough. This person is mean with me. This person does not love me. And it was all the opposite. And they hadn't come to that realization yet. And sometimes things can happen into our life and we can say, but Jesus, God doesn't love me. God doesn't look after me. God is not here. God doesn't want my best interest. And it's only later that we realize, actually, God does love me and did love me even then. And he was looking for my best interest even then. He wanted the best for me. But in that situation, the brothers couldn't see that. And when we see, just after the father's death, so the father dies, and believe it that there was mourning in Egypt. So Jacob had nothing to do with the Egyptians, but yet I think there was 40 days of mourning in Egypt because of Jacob's death. And the brothers now become frightened. They think, ooh, Dad's gone. Now is the time for the revenge. Now is the time that Joseph is going to destroy us. He actually didn't do it because of our father. Right? So they sent a messenger to Joseph saying, chapter 50, verse 16. Saying, thy father did command before he died, saying, so shall he say unto Joseph, forgive, I pray thee now, the trespass of thy brethren, and their sin. For they did unto thee evil, and now we pray thee, forgive the trespass of the servants of the God of thy father. And Joseph wept when they spake unto him. And his brethren also went and fell down before his face and said, Behold, we be thy servant. And Joseph said unto them, Fear not, for am I in the place of God? But as for you, he thought evil against me, but God meant it unto good, to bring to pass as it is this day, so save much people alive. Now therefore fear ye not, I will nourish you and your little ones. And he comforted them and spake kindly unto them. Now look, for him, this story was resolved a long time ago. But his brothers still had fear. Right? And when this sin that we've tried to hide has been revealed, once it's been revealed, we should believe that it is forgiven. Right? It is in John 1:9 that says he is good, right, to forgive us, to those that confess. Right? When we come to him and we confess our sin, he is good and just to forgive us. And Jesus forgives us. And what does he say? He says, I throw your sin in the deepest of the sea. I forget them. I do not remember them. But it is we that remind him about it, that come because of a lack of faith, that we think, I have not been forgiven. I have not been set free. I have not been made free. And we think, surely he's going to make me pay for that at one point and at the other. And this is why in some cultures they talk about a God that has a whip. And especially as we're coming up to the time of Christmas, they think about this mean person that comes and that whips you because you have done wrong. And they think, oh, God is like that. He whips us when we do something wrong. He whips us and he whips us. They forget that when we tell him our sins, when we confess to him our sin, he is good and just to forgive us. He is good and just to forgive us. And he forgets about it. And this is why Joseph is weeping. He's weeping because he can't believe his brothers are thinking that he doesn't love them, that he's going to be destroying them, that he's going to kill them. He even tells them, he says, who am I? Am I God to judge you? I'm not God to judge you. Right? He says, I'm going to be taking care of you and of your family, of your children. And he comforted them and spake kindly unto them. He says, don't worry about your provision. I'm going to take care of it. Because they were probably thinking maybe he'll stop nourishing us, all that provision that he's been given. And they were doubting. They were doubting of the love of their brother because they couldn't see how they would have done the same thing. As Sister Paula was saying, right? If this had happened to me, maybe I would have reacted in a different way. But we have to believe that when God says, I have forgiven you, God allows us to go through a process so that the impurities would come out. Not to then judge us and say, ha ha. Elijah does that. I hate that with the death of them that he did that. Ha ha. When something like wrong happens and they're like not happy against it. Ha ha. But God doesn't do that. He doesn't laugh at us. He doesn't mock us. He wants the best for us. And Joseph there was reminding them, listen, I don't mean any evil towards you, right? I just mean that I'm going to provide for you. I'm going to give you food. I'm going to provide for your children. And he spake kindly to them and comforted them. And so we need to know that we have a God that loves us. And when we look at Matthew 28, when Jesus was risen, we see that some worshipped him, but others doubted when they saw Jesus in Matthew 28. Let's go and look at it because I saw some grim faces there. Like, what are you talking about? I'm not giving out names. So, and Jesus kept verse 18. And Jesus came and spake, verse 17. And when they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. Right? Some doubted. Some weren't sure. Is this really Jesus? Is this really the one that we were with for several years? Right? And Jesus was there. Some worshipped him. Some asked themselves no question. They said, this is Jesus. We need to worship him. but others doubted. And we want to come into the presence of God with faith, believing that, we have a position in Christ. And we don't want to be bringing up, I've done this in the past. Are you sure you've forgiven me? No, when we've confessed, once we've confessed it, once it has come out, which is really important, because if it stays in, then it becomes gangrene. But if it comes out, then he's able to heal us and forgive us. And then we must believe that God has forgiven us, and to go on, to go farther than that now, and to go for the plans that God has for us, right? And I just thought this Joseph was just a wonderful story, and I thought I would share these thoughts with you this evening. At this time, we're going to pray.